So
Thank you.
the way I'm going to challenge you is that, of course, you have all the Silicon Valley references and all the rest of it. But now we're talking about how could this work in Denmark, how could
Yep,
this work
absolutely.
in the Nordics,
Yes.
and that's where we're going to be pushy, but in a friendly way.
No,
And I'm not a journalist,
Yes,
I'm a
yeah.
business person.
That's fine, yeah. So the essence is we're going more to a globally connected market. So competition, markets, everything comes from everywhere. In those connected markets, they're more of what we call Glengarry, Glen Ross markets.
Yes.
First prize, Cadillac. Second prize, steak knife. Third prize, you're fired. And so being the first to scale really matters. And the question is, how do you beat out the global competition and become first to scale? And the answer is, you do some things that are not standard business wisdom in terms of efficiency of operations, deployment of capital, human capital, et cetera, and you take risks that you otherwise wouldn't take, but you're taking the risk to get to scale quickly because the other bigger risk is third prize, you're fired. So first is, blitzscaling is a choice, and it's expensive. You do it because you need to be the first to scale. So you need to you have a business with network effects, you're going to have global competition, you need to win that race. So if you're going to do that, then you need to be able to establish your product market fit. So you want to be roughly on target before doing it. You need to raise what we call blitz capital, which is you need to be able to figure out how do I get a bunch of capital into the company or into the effort that we're doing, but if it's a startup, entrepreneur.
Yes.
And then what are the minimal set of things that we have to do in order to get to scale, and what are all the other fires we could let burn? So a classic one that happens within Silicon Valley is, well, maybe we don't actually really know our business model yet. Maybe we don't understand our customer acquisition costs. Maybe we don't understand our unit economics. And that's fine. We have enough understanding to know that we can work that out later, but first we're getting to scale. And that's the set of techniques that we detail in the book, including having a variety of counterintuitive rules, which go from, ignore your customer to embrace chaos to tolerate bad management. So it's definitely easier in Silicon Valley. Part of what Silicon Valley has is a talent network that is also talent comes here from everywhere in the world, including from the Nordics, an exchange of information and knowledge, the ferocity of competition here, so you actually know what the benchmark is. Once a company emerges out of this kind of, fierce competition, kind of a pit that Silicon Valley is, it's a very fierce and very strong competitor, and people learn what the benchmarks are. So all of that is actually really important, which makes it much easier, which also then makes capital more willing to invest in Silicon Valley companies because they go, okay, we see the pattern of how they come out and have globally transforming companies. Yeah. Now that being said, it is possible in other places, right? There's everything from Skype or Supercell out in the Nordics. There's Zara in Spain. It is possible to do. It's just harder. So I think there's three things. So one is look at where you have advantages that Silicon Valley doesn't have. Yeah. So if it's just a pure software, kind of scale software thing, Well, Silicon Valley does a lot of that, and that makes it kind of more challenging. So where are the areas that you have areas of uniqueness or difference? And so, for example, Skype was a classic one, because Skype would have never grown here because it was all of the cross-border calling. So that's an area, and look for those.
Yes.
Second is put more energy, like the Silicon Vikings, in building connectivity so that you have a learning loop and you understand what the current state of practice is, what the benchmark for moving at speed and scaling is.
Yeah.
And then the third is to also potentially choose ideas or angles of approach that are kind of the other approach. Part of what is required, and so for example, within Silicon Valley, there's 4 million people rounding up here, and only a small subset of those do the tech industry. So not everyone here plays this way.
It's like Denmark, 5 million people, not all of them are in high tech.
Yes, exactly. But what does happen is the group of people who play the technology games here are all in. That's the thing that matters to them, the globally relevant technology. And so they talk to each other constantly. So, like for example, when I meet with other entrepreneurs and other investors, which I do constantly, I ask them, what have you learned that I haven't learned? Right? So I can be doing that, and when I wake up on Saturday morning, that's what I'm working on. And I have meetings on Sunday afternoon in terms of what I'm doing. So in realizing what it is as global competition, is that it's not a game that you can dawdle at. It's a game where speed matters, and you have to figure out things and you have to develop and deploy them before, and get to scale, before the rest of the global competitors. And that's the thing that you need built as a culture. That's the networks of people that need to be talking to each other. That's the speed at which you need to be operating. And actually, one of the counterintuitive rules we have there is miss right now versus miss right. Because you actually want to have the person who will help you solve this problem. Look, we always hope that everyone will go to the entire levels and orders of scale, but you don't hire for that. You hire for solving the game that's in front of you. The key thing is how do you get to scale super fast? And so there are some contexts in government, which is like disaster release, other kinds of things are important. And actually, in fact, there is a little bit of a study which we may go into more of how governments do that, because that's really important. But one of the things we cover explicitly within the book is nonprofits. So, for example, Crisis Text Line, which is how do we turn big data texting into a high efficacy, low cost mental health care service. And how do we get that to as large as possible as quickly as we can, because it matters for providing health outcomes. It matters because the system only works once you're at a certain scale, so you need to get that scale for it to really work in terms of routing to counselors, getting data, feeding that data into algorithms. And so there's a number of different areas in addition to just making a very valuable business where the blitzscaling techniques work. So the first is to understand that more and more of the technologies that matter, the innovations that matter, the technology companies of the future will get there by blitzscaling. And then all industries are becoming more tech companies, so all industries are heading towards becoming tech companies. And startups, it's easier and easier because you have a globally connected market, so you can get to a new set of customers, you can leverage new platforms, like Google or Facebook or LinkedIn or any of these other ways as a way of acquiring customers very quickly. So the nature of the game to speed has happened, and the fact that you have an existing global network is less and less a guarantee of persistence and stability. So what that means is you have to say, okay, this is what the new game is going to be, and I have to adapt my own speed to it. So one part of it can sometimes, of course, be buy the relevant company or buy a company that can help you do that. Sometimes you can build it within your own, but then you have to have that group operate like a blitzscaling group. It usually has to be in its own area. It has to be disconnected from what normally happens with these scale companies, which is they become literally extreme masters at efficiency. They've learned for decade after decade. They know exactly how to tune the work process, the customer engagement process, but then that also locks them into the mode that they've been doing. So they need to be able to say, okay, for this project, we're going to have this other group do it. And frequently, for example, one of the ways that happens within Silicon Valley large-scale companies is they do these red teams to say, how would we be disrupted? And then let's go do that ourselves.
Yes.
We will set up the team to do it, and we will work to do it ourselves because we want to be providing that product or service in the future, even though we will be self-disrupting as we're doing it. So the key thing is to understand that the new great global scale companies come from applying these counterintuitive rules about how to get first to scale. And you need to both do that as a founder and entrepreneurs, and you need to have your team understand and learn how to play this team sport together. And so that is what is key. The speed of technological change is accelerating. The topple rate by which large companies fall out of being the largest companies is an increasing factor. The way to persist, to succeed, to thrive is through matching that speed. So you need to learn how to pick up the speed about how you launch new products and services and how you deal with these new startups that are doing this blitz scaling. And in order to do that, you need to understand how to operate with trading off efficiency for speed, and which new risks you should take in order to continue to be the great and enduring institution that you already have.